Alrighty. First off, we've surpassed 2,500 subscribers. This video was initially supposed to be for that milestone, but I suppose we're well past that now thanks to the recent reception to the Wild PP videos. Plus, since it managed to get through voting twice, we're doing a quickfire review of every 00 ID in the game as of March 2026. The rules are simple. Since there are over 50 of them as of writing, we'll be allocating them about a minute each and going one by one through each sinner's whole selection. I'll try to say at least something good about each of them, or at least some means of making use of them. At this point in the game's life cycle, a lot of 00s suffer from low clash numbers and less than stellar damage, but with 7 sinners fieldable and many options to go unopposed, a lot of them can still make use of their gimmicks. Anyhow, let's start with the quote-unquote weakest sinner, Yi-sung, and some very oddball 00 IDs. We've got 7 Association South Section 6, Yi-sung to start us out. This fella is quite honestly terrible. Low numbers, and an uninteresting aesthetic, I am sorry to say. Much as I like these 7 Associations gimmick, they really are just fella in a suits with sword. All of his skills are named after Ruiner combat pages in Fléché, Riposte, and Moulinette, all of which are far better in their original game. He has next to no rupture counts, a very greedy resonance conditional of 4 gluttony if you even want to make him clash, and everything is at +0 offense level, making him quite terrible at that too. His support passive is not the greatest either, only offering a clash power instead of raw damage, or anything particularly unique. While this can help in certain kinds of solos or hard mode contents, it's contributing very little in the long run, especially as a resonance passive. For the weirdly good parts, his baseline stats aren't actually that bad. He has 2 extra defense level, a 5 to 8 speed range, which is quite fast, and his skill 2 inflicts some very strong debuffs if it wins a clash. Pre-paralyzed not on this turn, but next turn is actually really strong. Couple that with a fragile as well, and that kind of debuff package is actually really solid. Next up on Yi-sung's plate is Molar Office Fixer Yi-sung. This fella is cleanly in Tremor and takes after Rain from Library of Ruiner. In doing such, they also borrow the discard mechanic, allowing them to more consistently use their skill 2 and 3. Those of which can actually pump out decent numbers. This ID actually has a game plan in needing to build up self-tremor count to access harder hitting conditionals and decent rolls. They achieve this by using their skill 2 and 3 to discard either other skill 2s or the skill 1. These gain him +4 tremor counts in doing so. If he skill 2s twice in a row, he's around 7 tremor counts. Not quite enough to skill 3 to full effect. Since he discards a lot for more consistency, there's good odds he'll be able to keep discarding more skills for more counts. At 5 counts, he gets a coin power for his skill 1, and at 10 counts he gets 2 coin power for his skill 3. Notably, with his skills though, they offer a pretty good amount of tremor count, especially on that skill 2, at least until it starts bursting tremor and going -2 on the burst. Anyhow, he bursts twice on his skill 3, which can be surprisingly useful. It can also clash at a 19, which honestly isn't the worst either for a 00. This fella is usable if you need a tremor stick at a budget for whatever reason, or just need a bunch of defense down since his kit also offers plenty of those. Combo with Regret Faust and Tremor Bursts can inflict an absurd amount of it. Moving along, we have the Stabby Boy, Pequod First Mate Yi-sung. As a member of the Pequod, they fit comfortably in the archetype of Blois, that being Bleed and Poise. In this fella's case, he can really use with more Poise, due to many of his conditionals requiring it to properly function. While his clashing can leave a fair bit to be desired, this fella is rather solid early on when you haven't built up a dedicated Bleed or Poise team as of yet. While not perfectly self-sufficient in their Poise gain, they have enough of it to build up a stack so long as it isn't burnt away by RNG early. With enough Poise, he can abuse his skill 2's coin reuse for a rather high amount of damage and bleed application. Though it doesn't have any damage boosting conditionals, being able to crit will amplify the damage, and his passive will then factor in to increase the amount of bleed he inflicts, going as high as 12 on a full reuse spree from his skill 2. As for the rest of his kits, we're looking mainly at that skill 3 and its weird ability to inflict 6 bleed potency and count on a crit. Some pretty funky positive numbers as long as he crits. If you give the guy Faust for a Calgia, all of his stability issues go away, and suddenly this guy can perform half decently. He won't be a clasher really, not with those numbers, but can offer a heck of a lot of bleed in a pinch. Throw him into the MD with the rest of the Blois or abuse his skill 2's capabilities where possible. Now for the Punchy Boy. Dishi Association South Section 4 Yi-sung is not actually all too bad on paper. He's Yi-sung's second discard based ID and works around Insight Jank for a HP shield. His coin power conditionals are quite easy to fulfill, being at a 5 for his skill 1 and 2, but only 1 coin power. Otherwise he's surprisingly durable and doesn't mind getting hits in order to inflict more sinking on his opponents. Where he falls apart in that department is a lack of sinking count to sustain his punching power. While he inflicts a lot of potency and gains plenty of shield, he may as well be a negative count ID. He also sports too many coins to keep shit healthy and doesn't deal enough raw damage to justify his use most of the time. However, he is one of those odd Yisungs with a lot of HP, aggro, and defense level, making him kind of a prickly sinking cactus if you'd rather use him for that instead. In doing so, you can abuse his guard to discard skills for shield and deliberately get hits instead, which plays into his S-freeze conditional for coin power. In getting hits, he can offer up to 8 sinking per turn as long as it was through shielded hits. Considering his HP pool, he can eat quite a few to boot. For that, an encounter design has come with more unbreakable coins. He's got a weird niche if you want to use him. The last one on offer is Lantern Yisung. This guy's whole shtick is to get killed. Getting killed in-game, getting killed in his story, getting killed for major profits. Some fellas reckon this guy is one of the best 00 IDs in the game due to his benefits from being killed. In this particular case, it's a bunch of ego resources and a major jump start to a rupture stack. As for the rest of his kits, it tries to get him killed through low numbers and abuse of unbreakable coins, including a 50% damage amp to self. While this seems like it would make it particularly easy for him to die, there are times where this is much the opposite, mainly in unfocused encounters. In focused encounters though, you can let him get beat up with ease while profiting big with his unbreakables for plenty of sweet rupture counts, especially on that S2. While he can be a tad finicky to use due to his desire to die, if you can find a way to implement him in your strategy, he's quite potent in turboing both rupture and ego heavy ones. Keep him in the back pocket just in case. Bit of a shame though that he can't Fell Bullet himself. His passive would be Fell Bullet's best friend after all. Alright, make sure you have free gluttony before you off him, otherwise he dies in vain. That's all of these songs out of the way. Let's look at Faust, starting with W Corp level 2 cleanup agents. Faust. This is another one of those IDs that takes a lot from Library of Ruiner. In this case, a lot of Leslie's kits in Energy Cycle, Leap, and Overcharge, though a lot of other W Corp IDs do share these skills too. Anyhow, she's a fairly self-sufficient ID, being in charge, but oddly does not generate very much charge for herself at all, at least not until her passive is online. With her passive online, she acts as a tiny battery, dishing out an extra charge to one ally and herself every time she attacks. This can help some IDs reach charge breakpoints, but isn't her main appeal. Most of the appeal is instead in the kinds of things she can use her charge on. Her skill 2 gains enough charge to then expend on inflicting a pretty massive 4 bind. If you're having speed problems, this is an easy 2-turn solution at least. As for the skill 3, as long as you have 5 charge, this thing is stupid good. 2 attack down and 3 paralyze on turn is already fantastic, but being next turn makes it even stronger. Don't even need to win a clash for this one, so letting it go unopposed is perfectly fine too. While often overlooked for the more damage-centric Faust IDs, this one is a potent support when fielded. Just that speed range is going to hurt a lot. Now, Lobotomy Corp Remnant Faust is the opposite in speed. Outside of the haste show, she's one of the faster IDs out there, capable of getting up to 6 haste through her kit alone. While her status use is wildly out of place, being split in Rupture and Poise, most of her use is more so from that bloody high speed. With that kind of speed, many debuff-centric egos surge in usability. Hexnail, for instance, can be utilized quite well by her. Same with shoving her in an Envy Resonance team thanks to that Envy Evade. Before the Rabbit came out, she was also a contender for one of the best users of Everlasting to boot. She can still be used for such if you build up enough poise to slam that S2, guarantee her being the fastest at a minimum of 9 speed. If you want to utilize her more easily, I would heavily recommend any poise count stims, since otherwise she doesn't gain enough naturally herself. Aside from that, her durability sucks at a -4 defense level and low HP. If she gets hits, it will hurt quite a lot. Anyhow, speed is her selling point. Go stare at all of Faust's egos on how to cash out more. Zwei Association South Section 4 Faust treats every instance of defense level up in this ID as just charge for herself and any other Zwei IDs, and you pretty much get the picture. She's a half-decent support in a cactus team if you really want to build one. Limbus unfortunately heavily favors bursts rather than chip damage, leading to those kinds of strategies being rather terrible in practice. She provides next to no damage outside of the Zwei, and only really accelerates most of their game plans. Rather, she doesn't have much of her own, since all of her skills mostly benefit others rather than herself. Personally, I wouldn't recommend using her outside of those gimmick teams. Due to the burst-heavy nature of many of Limbus's encounters, she doesn't have quite as much of a place here. Her stats are still as expected though, tank-heavy with high HP and increased defense level. Unfortunately, she's got -1 offense level on pretty much everything, making clashing a difficulty. While she can get some coin power from defense level, the only other thing defense level helps with is when getting hit. Essentially, this ID is the kind that prepares for failure. Ah yes, the local god tier sinking support. Wuthering Heights Butler Faust. Most fellas will praise the ever-living hell out of this ID and posit it as one of the very best in terms of sinking. Well, yes and no. Her clashing leaves a lot to be desired, but if she can land her S2, she goes quite sinking positive. If she lands her S3 though, she lets the team go far more positive instead. The main appeal behind this ID is in Echoes of the Manor. This thing does a coin flip every time something with it gets hit, leading to a potential extra sinking count. With a few techs and high instance neutral or positive sinking count coins, Echoes can provide a high stim to stabilize counts for 2 turns. Combo it with Hanafuda's Kozan or Yisang's Bygone Days for easy results, or even go as far as Solemn Lament if you feel like gambling a bit. Anyhow, aside from that, she has quite a bit of use in the back line. There's a pretty solid SP heal on her if you don't want to use her for echoes and just want some SP stability instead. This Faust is real solid even in the latest content just for all of the above. Expect her to need to unoppose a few times as required to not get her shit kicked in. Faust out of the way, we can move on to Don. Starting out is Shi Association South Section 5 Director Don. This is a weird copycat of Yujin, just without the boundary of death, which makes her a lot sadder to use. Like Runa's Shi, her kit focuses on high speed and HP based conditionals, functionally making her a glass cannon. Unfortunately, there isn't much damage here, just a lot of bloody speed. She has 3 sources of haste, those being on her S1, S2, and her passive, letting her build up an incredibly stupid amount of speed. This then plays specifically into her S3, which clashes at a stupid 30 as long as she's faster than 10 speed, which is surprisingly doable here. Anyhow, a lot of modern stuff can clash that high, so rather than focusing on her on-field capabilities, most fellows go for her support passive instead. With the number of IDs with Slash that can fix themselves as going first, her passive is a free 10% damage for those that can maintain that speed. Nothing amazing, but a tiny little bump as needed. Otherwise she goes fast, clashes hard, and does little to no damage. The poise on her also does virtually nothing without any stability. N-Corp Mittelhammer Don. Ah yes, the Don with the comically large hammer. A lot of fellas have long written her off. She's too goofy, doesn't contribute enough to the either archetype, but she's Bleed and Tremor, which now has some real support in the form of N-Corp Ryoshu and Alan Gregor. This ID is a funny tech for that team if you bring along N-Corp Faust alongside. This causes her to have ready access to Fnatic, which ups her bleed count application through nails, as well as making it somewhat easier for her to clash. Funny enough, she also has a freebie Tremor Burst on her skill 2, as long as enough nails stick. That and her S3 also provides an attack down, and 2 paralyze the following turn, which is far better than on turn, especially given her speed. As long as you bring the one who grips alongside and activate her passive, she doles out a surprising amount of tremor count and bleed. Oh, and while she can't perfectly feel it on her own, she can make use of Wishing Khan quite well, giving an instant stim of 4 bleed counts to 3 targets, or rapidly bursting tremor at a discounted rate. Lantern Dawn. Facialist Rupture's premium count management supports. I won't sugarcoat it, she doesn't clash amazingly well, but doesn't specifically need to, allowing us to go pretty ham in just sending her. Since she also has a +4 defense level to her name, letting her get slapped around and making use of the aggro is pretty alright. Anyhow, she provides neutral to positive rupture count across her skills as long as you meet the conditions. Otherwise, just follow a few simple rules when using her. Her S1 always goes positive as long as the stack has at least 2 counts. Her S2 goes negative unless the last hit is at 2 rupture counts, in which she'll go neutral. The S3 goes neutral as long as the stack is built. As with almost all statuses, hitting a stack of 1 count will just kill it, so keep that in mind across all status application anyhow. Aside from that, she has quite a lot of self-healing, which when combined with her heightened defense level and HP makes her very difficult to kill off. Moving along to her last ID, it's Blade Lineage Salsu Don. As part of the Blade Lineage, she sits cleanly in poise and is one of the best poise merchants in the game. All of her skills let her spread poise around to her teammates, more so even if they're from the Blade Lineage too. Now, while you can't really expect her to clash amazingly without Kim Salt or deal all too much damage without Swordplay of the Homeland, you can still pass poise around to her team for pretty much free, considering how cheap her passive is to fuel with a 2 Pride Resonance. Off the field, she can also provide a poise stim as well, allowing her to remain exceedingly relevant even in the latest content. While she finds most of her home in the Blade Lineage, she can still offer a good amount in poise-based compositions. 1 more sinner down, just 9 more to go. Christ, what the hell did I actually agree to here? Next. The sinner of the most recent Kanto, Ryoshu. Starting out, we have 7 Association South Section 6 Ryoshu. This one is an outlier, well, a very weird, warped kind of affair. She rolls stupid high for a 00, out-rolling some 000 IDs as well, which is just outright absurd. She doesn't need much in the way of conditionals either. Anyhow, most of her power budget is in the S3, which offers up 5/fragility on the following turn, as long as she wins the clash. Since it clashes at a 19 with a +5 offense level, this isn't hard to win, and offers one of the single biggest boosts in damage the game has to offer. The turn after, make sure you slot her skill 2, since it gains power from /fragility and deals out defense level down. You can also get a /fragile from her counter, but do note that this is on turn rather than the following one. All in all, Ryoshu starts out stupid strong here with this ID. I've even used her in the latest counter and watched her make clear a certain solo fight with her as well. LCCB Assistant Manager Ryoshu gives her a bloody shotgun. Though the latest shotgun user completely overshadows this particular cool factor, this Ryoshu offers a horrifying triple status ID with some very unusual capabilities. She rolls like ass, but has direct SP damage, offense level down, tremor and rupture, as well as of course tremor bursts. There's also SP healing to boot. Her kit is actually quite overloaded by mentioning all that alone. It's a shame that she has 00 ID numbers. Regardless, her whole gimmick is building poise to then dump through her skills for stronger status application. On her own, she doesn't really build poise all too quickly, even with her passive in tow. However, if we give her 4 gear to work around, she can do some exceedingly stupid shit. How to say, a single coin that inflicts 8 tremor and rupture potency and 4 count for each. Turbo excessive stuff when allowed to go through. Aside from that, her support passive is actually pretty solid for anyone who needs to reload. Funky echo damage when an ally runs out of ammo. Blue Association South Section 4 Ryoshu. A grade 4 fixer, and she sure as heck feels like one. This is a 000 ID in disguise, at least so far as feeling similar to the rest of the 000 Lu IDs. In gaining both clash power and coin power, she's able to clash better than you'd expect. Since burn is also a very stable status, you can get these going exceedingly easy with the right setup, making her function quite well at almost all times. On top of that, she spreads burn around if she manages to kill anything. Furthermore, she's got bloody damage conditionals. These are really nice to have to supplement her low numbers, especially compared to many other 00 IDs. So if you want to make her shine, use 4th match flame on her. Every 4 turns, she just pops off stupid hard. More so in unfocused encounters, where you should use her. Anyhow, pair her support passive with Lamp Gregor if you want to see some stupid burn spread bullshit. As for the less good, she's a beatstick. There isn't any real gimmick to her besides the burn spread. While her numbers boost her beyond the base of a 000, it's not as high as them when they fulfill their conditionals. Yurodivy Ryoshu. This one is a bloody godsend in Tremor. While we have a shiny new toy to play with in Tremor, this one was one of the best Tremor count stabilizers. Essentially, she gets self-tremor to then inflict upon enemies, especially on the skill 2, this being up to 6 bloody counts. Otherwise, she is one of the earlier instances of assist attacks in the form of her passive, letting her follow up with an S1 on a stagger, gaining her an extra tremor count, and landing a free tremor burst too. Now more importantly is her support passive. This thing is kinda nuts since having 1 more self-tremor counts helps out quite a lot of other IDs. While we're losing out on one of our best counter pliers, we enable Regret Faust, any of the Molars, and quite a few other IDs to turbo their game plans. In the case of Regret Faust, this is letting her do her AoEs a lot more often, which can vastly accelerate encounters. Both on-field and off-field, she's bloody fantastic, so keep her in mind the next time you wish to run Tremor. Now for one of our most efficient sinners, so I'll be brief. Meursault's lot is difficult to justify fielding outside of one of them. Anyhow, starting out, Meursault. His other burn IDs now far outshine him, but in the past, this may have been your only option. His clashing is quite awful since he lacks any real power conditionals outside of his skill 3. If you for some reason wish to spread burn around with him, it's possible, but the Hornet now does that, but better, realistically speaking. If you've got no other options on a burn team, and only wish to use them for fast MD clears, being able to spread around the burn might be useful enough to justify using him. Don't expect much though, since he's otherwise a poor man's idea of burn. His on-field passive would be fantastic if he had more cactus capability, but alas, he does not. Meanwhile, the support passive is just status slop. I wouldn't recommend raising him. Rosespanner Meursault. I unironically used this fella during Canto 7 because we didn't have anyone else in that slot for a full 12 Sinner Tremor team back in the day. He's an odd Tremor charge ID that only really uses his charge to burst Tremor harder. Unfortunately, his Tremor burst is a -3 that expends all charge to burst harder. Since he only gains charge off of his S3, this is a rather shite option to use. Also, even if the charge conditional is maxed out, its efficiency is absolute garbage. If you burst something at 99 potency, potency, you raise stagger by 99 once for 1 count on most other IDs. Here you'd be raising it by 149-ish for a 3 count. This is legitimately 50% efficiency, requires 10 charge, which he can't fuel himself, and finally costs 3 counts. Just no, don't use this guy if you can help it. On a different note though, his conditionals are all on count rather than potency, making him a pretty unusual case of early season jank. If you use him, make sure you have someone count healthy and maybe a separate source of charge. The middle little brother Meursault. This count is actually really usable, as long as you bring the other middle fellas, or at least some envy support alongside. He applies envy-centric buffs and debuffs, and plus coin drop, which is rather useful. He also scales off of envy resonance for his skill-free encounter, the former being really funky since it means everyone else needs to slot envy but him to get the full benefits out of it. If it's an unfocused encounter, this won't really be an issue, but otherwise it's a real jank requirement that just bricks your team's A-res for an extra coin power. Aside from that, he's an SP healing engine for the rest of the middle, which is very useful, especially if you plan to spam counters rather than use their skills for resonance bonuses. Last to mention is his support passive. A 10 SP heal for a bit of team building efforts isn't too bad, and worth considering if you can get both envy on the board and share a faction. Meursault's last 00 ID is the Dead Rabbits boss. On the field, he's not the most useful due to being rupture negative. This would posit him as a payoff rather than a stacker, and well, his payoff isn't good enough for that. For a 00, he actually clashes pretty okay, getting clash power out the ass thanks to his passive. The only issue being that his kit is so negative, you'll probably never reach those conditionals, unless he's the only one going negative. Aside from that, he lowers offense level through his S2 and S3, both of which are okay enough, I suppose. The 4 coin fully negative affair that is the skill free is particularly sad though. Anyhow, he serves one very specific purpose, enabling Shichun Ishmael through lowering offense level for her conditionals. Thing is, you can achieve the exact same thing just by fielding him in the back, and well, since he doesn't have a Heisho of his own yet, he's actually perfect to slot in. Bit of a shame to go out on just a piece of tech, but that's what a lot of these 00s end up being. Onto the last of the top row, the Hongers. This fella has 5 of them, all serving very specific purposes. Kurokumo clan Wakashu Hongers exists for one thing in most people's minds, and it's Cloud Cutter. This is a 4-coiner disguised as a 2-coin skill. If you run him outside a bleed or perhaps in a more slash-focused composition, you can pretty much just spam Cloud Cutter for a lot of pride slash damage. If you somehow struggle with Bamboo-Hatted Kim these days, or it's your first time against them, this Hongers is very capable of trivializing the fight just by abusing the man's resistances. It just amps his damage up to a really stupid amount. Aside from that, he doesn't really help all too much with bleed count, but provides plenty of potency. That's and he casually deals 6 paralyze with his skill free. Only thing is, it's on turn rather than next turn, so unless he happens to roll good and everyone rolls shite, the effectiveness of this debuff leaves a lot to be desired. Blue Hongers. This fella has some real funky stuff tied to them, mostly that their burn count capabilities are unusually high. The whole kit plays around raising his sanity to dump out an increasingly high amount of burn count through his passives and coin conditionals. The skill 2 specifically deals out 4 burn counts just for being at 45 SP, which is wild. The rest of his kit also scales off of burn count rather than potency, and can make him clash better than some of his other 00 blue peers, just not Ryoshu. Anyhow, most people would rather just bench the guy to take advantage of his support passive. Allegedly, it is bugged and hands out far more burn count than it is actually supposed to. Haven't utilized it in a long time due to the Burning Bird engine existing, but this is account merchants for the most count stable status if you somehow need it. W Corp Hongers is a charge battery for the rest of the team. He spreads around charge barrier, which in turn raises the charge counts of others in the composition so long as it doesn't get popped. He's also very charge healthy himself, able to gain quite a lot through his skill 1 and skill 2, both granting him 6 each. This lets him proc his passive and go much faster with free haste when maxed out. This lets him apply shielding before others get hit at times. It also means he can pop off his egos earlier for their debuffs and benefits, most notably Dimension Shredder. Using the 2 together lets him gain even more charge and gives him a death cheat. If you manage to overclock it, it's a stupid amount of fragile applied in an AoE as well. Aside from that, there isn't really all too much more to the guy. Charge barrier merchant, but only once every 6 turns. Otherwise gotta find another outlet for that self-charge. Book Office Fixer Honglu. A did go over this guy in brief for the WellPP catalog video. This guy goes fast and inflicts bleed. He has some inbuilt haste to enable this and some execution damage to give him some level of damage beyond non-existent. Otherwise, he deals pierce damage and has some alright affinities for a pierce bleed team. Man also inflicts a decent clip of count on his S2 if he's fast enough, and considering pierce bleed likes inflicting bind, he really should be. Not much else to say really, you probably already have the fella thanks to rolling on WellPP, so he's kind of a consolation prize. Moving on to the last and probably most misunderstood fella, Fanghunt Hongers. This guy is amazing in exactly one Kanto and Intervalo. That's it. In Kanto 7 and the Warp Express, almost every enemy is a Blood Fiend or Blood Bag, triggering a lot of his conditionals and passives. These are extra damage and extra coin power. If you want vampire discrimination and hate, this fella is your guy. Also, his upside story is completely unhinged and bloody fantastic. Added onto his Blood Fiend hate is dealing additional rupture to targets with bleed and HP healing down to stop them from regenerating. Unfortunately, he is the victim of 15 free rupture, meaning once an enemy reaches the aforementioned potency and count splits, his status infliction goes negative for some payoffs instead. In this case, it's all coin power. This lets him get up to 3 additional coin power on S2 and S3 against Blood Fiends and their Blood Bags, boosting his skills up quite a bit. He also gets a really funny double tap on his skill 3, turning into a 4-coiner that rolls upwards of 28 against Blood Fiends with 15 rupture and 3 counts. His support passive makes many encounters with Blood Fiends piss easy since it denies their Blood Feast. With the most joyful fella out of the way, we can start on the brooding British cunt, Heathcliff. His selection is jank in some of the best ways. Starting out, we have She Association's South, Section 5, Heathcliff. This fella has quite a bit of infamy since one fella out there has used him to solo all the way through Kanto 6 last I checked. He's got all the hallmarks of an overworked She fixer and a bunch of their skills from Ruiner to boot. Conveniently, he also lowers his HP with some skill usage, although since it is a flat amount of HP lost, it's actually gotten harder and harder to lower his HP to his conditionals as he levels up. When those conditionals are fulfilled though, he can actually deal out a pretty disgusting amount of damage, especially on that S3 and counter, both of which offer 50% extra damage on top of what Poise would let him do. Notably though, that S3 can be an AoE, and rolls rather high for one at that. His support passive is pretty nice on a burn team, or any Wrath-centric affair. 20% more damage is on the higher end as far as support passives go. N-Corp Kleinhammer Heathcliff is posited as one of the better N-Corp fanatics. For the low cost of running 3 other N-Corp fanatics, you can get him 1 extra coin power across all of his skills. This is actually kind of good, but requires you to field an extra N-Corp fanatic with the other 2 triple O's, which can be a bit troublesome. With the skill power boost from Fnatic, if he can source it from another Sinner, he actually clashes quite good for a really early ID. Anyhow, he provides nails like the rest of them, but has a 2+ coin drop on his skill 2, which is surprisingly nasty even in the latest Kanto. Aside from that, he doesn't really provide all too much, but even then, that makes him a contender for 3rd best N-Corp Fnatic, fighting for the spots with Don at least, in my opinion. His support passive is too niche to really use, so I reckon it's a field or bust kind of scenario, and well, he comes in a package of 4, if you must. 7 Association, South Section 4 Heathcliff. Now this guy still gets used today in Heysholess Rupture. He's not restrained as much by the limitations of the Ruiner style 7 fixers, and instead has a bunch of unique skills of his own. He isn't really fencing with his saber, but more so just batting it around, leading to plenty of rupture counts through his S2. That's a bloody +2 for free. It also doesn't harm an existing stack all too much, since it inflicts counts on clash win rather than on hit first, before then applying 2 more counts. His coin count is also quite low, meaning he ultimately doesn't impact the stack too much, even with his full bucket in tow. Aside from that, he can flush it out with his skill 3 quite healthily, only going -1 unless it lands a kill, wherein it goes +1 as well. Furthermore, he can inflict quite a lot of potency thanks to his passive, so long as the resistances are fatal, and 3 other allies are also from the 7 Association, which in Heysholess Rupture is very possible. Multicrack Heathcliff is one of the very best welfare units we've ever received. At the time, he was Heathcliff's best charge ID that was meant to function in charge. His whole game plan focuses around generating a lot of charge and burning plenty of it for big coin power spikes and plenty of useful debuffs. Photo electricity, defense down, and blunt fragility all go go a long way in charge, especially the first one as it amps everyone else's charge count up by quite a bit, up to 6 per hit, which can be exceedingly stupid. Aside from that, he can also do some stupid stuff through his support passive. 5 extra maximum charge count sounds stupid, but can help meet certain breakpoints for those IDs that burn all their charge at once to gain charge potency. The Arcop Hongers and Multicrack Faust for examples. You can get some of their bullshit turboed even faster than they already can. Regardless, this guy is a competitive pick in charge, even against his newer W Corp rival. Pretty much all of Heathcliff's options had some level of usage somewhere. Honestly, I don't think there's a genuinely terrible Heathcliff ID, as much as fellas would argue that Sun Shower is just that. I beg to differ. Next up, we're gonna have some trouble. Ishmael has a very mixed bag of 00 IDs. Let's start with the freebie from the tutorial. Shi Association South Section 5 Ishmael. This very first ID is actually really cool. This very first ID is actually a really cool affair with HP based conditionals. While the conditionals sound cool, she doesn't have a convenient way to lose HP compared to Heathcliff, meaning she's going to eat 2 staggers before she can actually use the cool stuff to begin with. That said, getting a better Cloud Cutter on demand with huge amounts of poise is bloody huge, and directly translates to a pretty good beat stick. Funny enough, apparently the skill 2 coin reuse happens even during clashing, since it's worded differently to boot. That said, if Ishmael had better ways of losing HP, this ID would be quite a lot stronger, but alas, gotta stick with either the MD gift or bust, I suppose. The S-Freeze heal is insult to injury, if anything, since she's pretty likely to just heal back up past the breakpoint if it goes off. All in all though, pretty fun first ID to get. LCCB Assistant Manager Ishmael is another 00 with ammo. This ID can't clash to save its life. It has low rolls, but also just terrible offense level all around. However, she makes up for it in a really stupid way. Mostly in her absolutely ridiculous status application, whether it be the bloody 16 tremor and 4 counts on her skill 2, or the 5 fragile on her skill 3. Both are strong enough arguments to try and field her even in modern content. The former one is one of the fastest ways of building up a tremor stack, even to this day, and the latter is just such a ridiculous amount of extra damage that if Ishmael ever gets haste on demand, this ID becomes one of the single most broken damage supports in existence. Keep an eye out for anything that lets her reliably outspeed everyone else. Aside from that, be wary of her ammo consumption, since without bullets, she's actually useless. Alright, casually inflicts free paralyze on her skill 1 if it hits. Sloshmail. Well, lobotomy ego sloshing Ishmael. Being this ugly a design is grounds enough not to use this ID alone. Okay, fine. She has a lot of weird little gimmicks that turn her into an unusual tank. For one, she has +5 defense level by default and on her guard skill, that of which rolls for 20 with a base of 15. The passive increases her durability dramatically since she can get up to 30 barrier on top of said guard, so long as the turn before she didn't attack. As for the rest of her skills, they all have clash lose conditionals. Not clash win, clash lose. So to use her effectively, you're going to want to alternate guard turns as well as deliberately lose clash for massive status infliction. This will give her a barrier to tank with, while inflicting split status between Rupture and Tremor. If she had something on getting hit, she'd be actually fantastic. Alas, no. Also that S3 Tremor burst for 4 counts, awarding 5 Rupture. Bloody terrible. Last to Ishmael's name is Edgar Family Butler Ishmael. I really want to make her work, at least compared to quite a few other IDs out there. I was baited into Limbus by mates at first. Bit unfortunate that we haven't gotten any more since. Anyhow, this Ishmael's main draw is the amount of status effects she can put out, so long as she crits. Main problem being that she can't generate poise count to save her life, especially as that S3 eats up all of it. The +6 poise potency there is something of a trap that will absolutely kill your count stack. There's ways to supplement poise in either for Calgears or passive effects, but they eat up precious sinner slots and resources just to let her inflict statuses. Thankfully, however, all of her conditionals are based on speed, and with bind and haste built into her kit, there is some level of usability to her. If you want the most out of her, give her poise. Just note that there are far better Ishmaels for sinking, and to instead use her sinking to nuke down sanity rather than any real damage. On the bench though, she offers up to 20% more damage to fellas with sinking. This can unironically be a major boost to Rian Sung's Furioso turn, specifically as when indulging in prescripts, he gets a metric fuck ton of speed. Now comes Rodion. Oh god, you have some really useless IDs. But we'll see if there's even a snowball's chance in hell of making them work to some way or another. LCCB Assistant Manager Rodion. Contender for one of the worst IDs in the game. Her conditionals are really fucking weird. The first two skills need someone with blunts going after her to even function. And well, the last needs her to take no damage before getting hits with it. Both conditions are really bloody weird. The first we can fulfill with Zwei Ishmael in guard stance or just running a whole bunch of blunt IDs. The latter is pretty much on all the time, so long as she doesn't eat an AoE or otherwise get slapped around. All of them have +5 offense level. Honestly, it's not bad, all things considered. People wrote her off too fast, without even trying to make her work, because the statuses she applies are all quite strong. Plenty of paralyzed and defense power down, which is becoming increasingly relevant. If nothing else though, that support passive really helps in downing bosses. Most newer bosses always slot a defensive skill these days after all. Ah yes, the Pizza Warmer Savant. N-Corp Mittelhammer Rodion. This one is the other contender for third best N-Corp ID. Yeah, it's kind of a freeway tie in my opinion, since the final N-Corp member is just that useless. And he's a 000. Anyhow, he inflicts bleed and nails. Can get herself Fanatic, and gets better for every Fanatic you include in your composition. She can get quite a lot of damage going, but unfortunately has to wrestle with her low-ass numbers. Anyhow, early on, she can fit in Pierce Bleed, along with the one who grips and the Klein Hammer. If you happen to run Sinclair alongside, you've got a pretty functional starting roster with just 1 or 2 more additions. Personally, I ran something pretty close, just with Arcorp Heathcliff and Ringsang alongside. She'll help you out early on with low investments. Don't expect her to carry you through later content, especially when you hit Canto 7 and run into Unbreakables. The triple stagger threshold is going to hurt there. Zwei Association South Section 5 Rodion. Close to useless. Even more so than LCCB Assistant Manager. He rolls low, expects to get hits, and has poise shielding, I suppose. Since it's all poise count and no actual poise, this bloody sucks. She can't return fire, but basically exists to slowly die off. All of her skills are on a -2 offense level to boot, meaning she 100% cannot clash to save her life. She has literally 0 saving graces, meaning she's not just set up for failure, she's set up for death. Do not use this ID. There's no world where she's useful to actually implement. Even her support passive is too ass to actually use. Ironically, she'd be LCB Assistant Manager's best friend due to her blunt skills and speed range, but just don't, okay? It's not worth any resources at all to invest in her. Finally, to at least go out with something, we've got T-Corp Class 2 Collection Staff Rodion. This is, weirdly enough, a 00 ID designed around clashing. He actually has a game plan as well. Use her defensive skill to borrow time and get clash and haste buffs, or clashing with her skills 1 and 2 for tremor application. When enough tremor is on target or right before a big burst, she can inflict time moratorium with her skill 3, that of which can clash surprisingly good and all but guarantee the debuff to land on target. Aside from that, she inflicts some bind to help things go along. Anyhow, her kit gives her such a stupid amount of clashing power and a death cheat of sorts. While a low HP yo-yo if she somehow gets to 16 to 20% HP, which will rocket her back up to 76 to 80% while recovering from her stagger. Not bad really, but yeah, clash with her for tremor stonks. Her conditionals let her do it quite well after all. Her S1 can outclash other S1s from 000s, even if their whole kit activates, getting 2 from the skill, 2 from borrowed time, and 2 from time moratorium, letting her clash at 17 on her S1, higher than the average 15 with conditionals fulfilled. Rodion's set was a special kind of mixed bag. I reckon it's about the same for some of her 000 IDs, but at least there's one really useful ID there, I suppose. Moving along though, we've got Sinclair's bunch, which are, well, about as mixed. Zwei Association South, Section 6 Sinclair is god-awful. Just like Zwei Rodion, he can't clash, and is there to prepare for failure. He rolls hopelessly low on everything but his S3, and works around getting that skill off, specifically for any real benefits. Now if you want some turbo jank, he actually increases to claim their bones damage by quite a bit, since he shares around defense power up, directly affecting to claim their bones' power. It's really stupid that it works that way, but funny that he can do that at all. Aside from that, he can stack some protection up, but is otherwise useless for much else. I'll stop ragging on this fella and move along, since I suppose you get the idea at this point. Just don't use this guy. The effort isn't worth it for 1/6 of his kit. Los Mariachis Jeffer Sinclair. I have one fella in my community that absolutely adores this guy, and has even written a bloody guide on him. You know exactly who you are. That said, he's Sinclair's only syncing option, which is a special kind of tragic. His numbers are turbo dogshits outside of his S3, and he also has -3 offense level on all of his skills, putting him at a clashing disadvantage at almost all times. Anyhow, he's got some of the most unique mechanics in the game, those being stagger threshold manipulation on his evade, and a crit boosted by the target's SP. The S3 also lowers stagger threshold by 50% of damage dealt. Beyond that, he only has the one stagger threshold, meaning he's not getting staggered at all. Most people will just use him for his support passive. It's just free 10% damage when fueled in most cases. Very boring compared to the rest of his kits, but one of the most commonly used support passives when available. Red Sheet Sinclair, also known simply as Talisman Sinclair. They took this guy out the back and shot him in the head execution style. He was sacrificed on the altar of Heisho Rupture so that Faust may live. I'll be honest, I'd rather have this guy back since it enabled far more team play and broken strategies than Faust alone. Anyhow, nowadays Talisman is no longer a god among men and is instead relegated to man with stick that occasionally tickles you with Rupture. Just don't use him. Talisman got gimped so hard that he's pretty much relegated to the bench. Speaking of which, the bench passive is just Rupture Slop. If you must field him though, at least do the funny and field him with the rest of the Tech Liberation Alliance, and learn how screwed they were during the attack in Canto 4. Save yourself the trouble, he's already dead. Now, Molar Boatworks fixes Sinclair is funny as shit. What do you mean? You can self-tremor burst and actually fuck yourself over. Anyhow, he can roll 6 with 4 coins, which is ungodly low. Even when he gets an extra coin power, it'll still roll a 10. This fella is almost never going to clash, and really shouldn't ever do so. Compared to the other Molar Boatworks fellas, he also doesn't do any discard shenanigans, making half his kits an absolute dud. Now if you can get 2 S2s off before using the rest of his kits, the narrative changes quite a lot. When he has 10 self-tremor, he inflicts a stupid amount of count thanks to his passive. If you decide to use an S3 with him, he goes even harder since he can functionally inflict up to 99 tremor counts on a target if you're that insane about it. Otherwise, it's 10 tremor counts from a single S3, which can be real stupid. If you use him, make sure you only send him unopposed. In doing so, you have an exceedingly stable count or a little more calculated effort. Just make sure he doesn't burst himself to death. Last and one of the final 00s to release, Zwei Association West Section 3 Sinclair. We've got a mini Zwei Ishmael, but noticeably worse in pretty much every aspect. He's designed around self-tremor and defense level, utilized to clash enemies. Compared to the Molar Boatworks fella, this guy can actually clash and does pretty much the same gimmick. The application of tremor count is far lower though, and this one is far more durable. This skill too is also quite useful when paired up with Zwei Ishmael. This is due to applying offense level based on their defense level, which is quite a good boost, all things considered. Anyhow, if you like how Zwei Ishmael plays, consider bringing this guy along for the fun support capabilities. He just requires a lot more effort to get up and running if you want to use him in the same way. Alright, the gloom on his skill 2 is very useful in traditional tremor reverb setups, so I suppose this fella is always a consideration. 2 more to go. While Sinclair had a mixed bag of IDs, Outis has, well, 1 terrible one, a weird one, and 2 pretty solid ones. So let's dive right in for the second last time. Blade Lineage Salsu Outis. She's the terrible one. Her first 2 skills can't really be saved. Even with Swordplay of the Homeland, they'll roll low and don't stabilize her poise in any meaningful way. While she gets some execution damage and an odd stagger damage razier, it's not enough to fully justify using her unless you're trying to do the 6-man BL team and are forced to use her. On the other hand, I really like using her support passive due to its simplicity. With 4 Pride, we get a whopping 30% extra damage to enemies below 25% HP. This is pretty much a boost to anyone who enjoys execution damage. Well, mostly staring at Alan Gregor since Meursault can use all the help it can get to be particularly potent. Same with, say, Captain Ishmael, who, upon getting any source to coin power or damage, can make it easier to get her passive kill requirements for poise and SP for the rest of the team. Thank you, Siren. Thank you. Use her as a support and almost never on the field. G Corp Head Manager Outis. Initially, you might throw her in syncing and call it a day, but I would say she works as a weird kind of generic support. She offers protection and attack power up, which some fellas can really work with. If you want one really dodgy strategy, use her with Rian Sung and an overclock to binds from Heathcliff. With Rian going last with Furioso, use her S2 to give him 2 damage ups and an attack power. This can be a really stupid way of boosting Furioso's damage capabilities. Aside from that, If you prefer to gamble, throw her in as a support instead. One tanky individual gets one of 3 baseline buffs in attack power, defense power, or protection, all of which are solid little boosts. If you want to use her in syncing though, she's surprisingly healthy, I suppose. Single coin on every skill really helps with that. It's also up to 9 bloody potency on that S3. With 6 turns, that's terrible, but as a quick jump start, not bad honestly. Cinq Association South Section for Outis. This fella is considered a sleeper powerhouse for some reason or another. She's not quite as insane as a certain fella may have made her out to be, but she's definitely no slouch either in her niche. She's an evade tank that can indeed do her job quite well. She gains aggro on her skills, haste on others, and poise for playing her as the kit dictates. Dodge enough times to slap hard with that S3 and let others go faster, spreading around the haste. Anyhow, the big note is the evade, which has a +5 defense level. Rolls up to an 18 as long as there's enough speed difference, and otherwise gains her a poise and a haste for every evade. This additional speed lets her either clash with her skills to stabilize her poise gain, or otherwise inflict bind to make things easier for your allies. The amount of damage and power she can gain on her skill 3 is also nothing to scoff at, being 70% on crits and even 4 final power with enough poise. If you just need someone to showboat and dodge around your enemies, this is the dodge tank. Maybe we'll get another one in the future. Finally, the one I abuse the most. Ring Pointless Student, Outis. While she's a bleed ID for the most part, she can spread around other statuses through her field passive and skill 3. While nowhere near as stupid as Ring Sung, it is nice to have, especially if it rolls syncing. Anyhow, she clashes well, inflicts a good amount of bleed, plenty of bleed count, and of course, like Ring Sung, has a coin reuse on her S2 that lets her pile on the count even further. With how easy it is to apply status effects, most of her conditionals are firing off at all times too, meaning easy coin reuse and extra damage on that skill 3. She also, for whatever reason, pumps out haste to allies, pierce damage, and even pierce power if the recipient belongs to the ring. All that to say, this is one of the strongest 00 IDs, and you should raise her just in case the ring gets more support. Well, they kinda did in the MD, but I digress. Coin reuse is always fun to see. Outside of the one stinker, the rest are rather solid when it comes to Outis. She keeps eating too good, I swear. Since I don't think there's much in the way of completely useless or redundant IDs in her lineup, really. Anyhow, the final sinner to round out the selection, and one of the longest bloody scripts, the bug guy himself, Gregor. Starting out, we've got our final Lu 00 ID. Lu Association South Section 6 Gregor. This fella is actually another burn-centric beatstick. He is the Timu or Wish Firefist, but he is actually still pretty consistent nonetheless. He won't clash as good as Ryoshu, he won't spread as much burn count as Hongers, but he does plenty of potency, and even increases potency further through his passive. He's also got a weirdly high number of coins to mess with. That said, his defenses are turbo garbage. 3 stagger thresholds, low HP, and a -4 defense level all hurt his durability quite a lot. That said, he recently received a pretty nasty glow up through Ryosung and his funny Furioso. If you can slam an overclocked binds from Heathcliff to make Ryosung the slowest, then 6 coins from Furioso are about to be boosted by 30% damage, so long as this fellow's in the back. Shame it's just raw damage though, and I'd rather just filled Gregor instead to make use of Solemn Lament to cash in. If you do run Ryosung and Poise though, take this fella and laugh. Let's look at RB Sous-chef next. He has god-awful rolls and stupid painful conditionals. None of them scale up really, and absolutely need external help to make anything work at all. Yeah, it's bloody painful to use. What do you mean? 10 bleed count to get a coin power. It's insane. Absolutely deranged. 4 bind or busts for damage on that skill 1. What were they smoking? Aside from those though, well, at least he gives out Paralyze and helps Ryoshu with his support passive. Yeah, don't use this guy. There's a reason he was the very last 00 ID I ever grabbed after playing for this long. He really doesn't have enough saving graces to make his usage worthwhile. Next is the Rosespanner Workshop Fixer Gregor. He's usable. Very weird to use, but definitely usable still. If Tremor Rupture ever becomes a thing, he'll be laughing, since his application of it isn't half bad. Skill 2 especially is a triple status one, having Charge, Tremor, and Rupture all in one package. If you abuse AEDD with this fella for Spark Discharge, he can go disgustingly positive on his S3, going +4 once in a blue moon. Otherwise, in combination with say Wei Sung, he can achieve some weird bullshit here and there. Otherwise, he does stim him rupture a good amount, especially with enough tremor count in tow. Unfortunately though, his defenses do suck and his speed is very average. 3 stagger thresholds right next to each other is just unfortunate, and outside of his niche usages in Heisho-less or limited Heisho rupture, don't bother. To our final fellow today, Kurokumo clan Captain Gregor. He's not half bad, especially with the newer Kurokumo support we have lying around. He also comes with a cool bottle smash animation attached to his skill 3. He inflicts a stupid number of debuffs and can actually clash okay enough, especially with the newer Kurokumo stuff in tow. Anyhow, with at least 7 bleed on targets, he inflicts plenty of offense levels down, attack power down, and plus coin drop across his skills. While he's not really going to feel this on his own, in a Kurokumo or competent bleed setup, this is a low bar to reach. Since all of the debuffs on his S3 are next turn to boot, his average speed won't hinder his support capabilities all too much either. That said, man's got no damage to his name. Not enough coin power and a complete and total lack of damage ups does gimp him significantly. Personally, I wouldn't field him without Kurokumo Ishmael at the bare minimum, but at that point, you may as well run the full spread of Kurokumo identities for the fun of it. Alternatively, run him but don't level him up at all. This way he can die faster and become fuel for the battle-ready engine for both Ishmael and Heathcliff. And that's everyone. 51 bloody 00 IDs and a monstrous amount of writing later. I don't want to imagine ever doing that again, and honestly I hope I never have to. At least not all of them at once. Anyway, while their kits are for the most part relatively simple compared to the 000s out there, a vast majority of them have little gimmicks that others don't, and are testing grounds for mechanics and design space that the developers could use as experiments. While it's a shame that we're not going to get any more of them due to the vertical power creep the game suffers, I reckon that's probably for the best at this point. All things considered, I think Project Moon is done with their kit design experiments and are ready to continue on making more quality affairs. I just wish the theming was more on point. Sinclair and Index Proselyte Faust should be 00s with their design, but instead are given the 000 numbers treatment. On top of that, we can't really ignore the elephant in the room. 00s aren't necessarily easier to make for the company and don't really provide as much income as releasing a shiny new 000 ID. They can't monetize them as well as prior, and the design space for them is becoming increasingly limited. As a developer, I don't see a real future for them anymore, considering we've gone too long without one at this point, being more than a year since Lantern Yi-Sang. If more of the generic Heishos were 00s, I think we could have seen more fellas in this category that were more interesting to play around, but unfortunately the company has chosen their bottom line. In some ways it's respectable, since even the welfares now are 000s, and you can get those pretty easily nowadays, but it still sucks looking in from the outside. Apologies for the dour note to end off the video, but I suppose that it's worth ruminating on the fate of this design space and giving it a proper burial. 00s, you were good to us, far better than we gave some of you credit for. May you rest in peace and forever haunt our gacha pools. Thanks for watching up until this point. As a 2.5k special, I think I've done a solid enough job. What scares me is how rapidly we're approaching 3k by the time I'm getting this out. It's been less than a week. Give me just a little room to breathe, would ya? Anyhow, thanks for the reception on all of the latest stuff. Means a lot to see it go that well. I'll be taking a break for most of the rest of this week, since I'll be at Animaga Sydney helping out at a booth. Specifically A28 Strawberry Macchiato, near the main stage. Go say hello if you happen to be going. I'll see if I get business cards made in time to hand out. We're not carrying Limbus or PM merch unfortunately, but we've got a bunch of other gacha and fandom related stuff lying around if you'd like to peek in. Means the next video isn't likely to come out until the following week. I hope this hour or so of me yapping along can keep you company until then. Aside from that, the community Discord is still open, and the Patreon is currently being held up by Artie and Derp. Finally, if you like the content, please subscribe and tune in to future videos. It goes a long way in pushing me along the algorithm. Thanks once again for helping me reach this milestone, and I'll see you all in a week or so.